In my 50 some odd years, I can barely distinguish one Thanksgiving holiday from another. Now, a few moments from a few dinners do stand out. Like the time when all the adult children in my family, including my cousins, we had a contest who could suspend a spoon on their nose the longest. I won. That's why it's so memorable. Or when my uncle, at the table, is at his house, he was our host, while we were eating dessert, well, he went around the table asking everybody, well, let's just say that for the same reason it was inappropriate then, it's equally inappropriate now for me to ask this question. Now, besides those few moments, it would be hard for me, I think, to distinguish one Thanksgiving from another, except for one particular Thanksgiving holiday. And not just a moment or two stands out, it's the whole damn day. Now, it was 20 some odd years ago, when I was living in a single wide trailer among the redwoods of Northern California. For context, let me just say that this is about this time in my life. If my life were compared to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey model, at the point I'm talking about, I was right down here, just a few degrees from due south, where Campbell, he calls it the abyss or the death, metaphorical death. I didn't know it at the time, but I was fast approaching that dark night of the soul, which I'm going to talk about a little bit next month. So I had moved to Northern California to continue my education to become a fishery biologist, but realized soon after starting classes that I could not study fish for the rest of my life. So living far from family and friends for the first time, I was to celebrate my first Thanksgiving alone. So instead of feeling sorry for myself, sitting at home alone, I really didn't know anybody up there yet, I made the decision to fast that day, having no food at all, drink only water. Not sure I could do this if I stayed at home. On Thanksgiving morning, I grabbed a gallon of water and a jacket, jumped into my old Dodge van, and I headed up the coast. I lived about 100 miles south of the Oregon border, right on the Redwood coast. I had no plans. I would let the day unfold as it would. I just had a full tank of gas and a gallon of water. I found a few trails to hike, a few new places to fish. And because I lived to fish back then, it was no coincidence that all my gear was in my van ready to go. It lived there. And I fished a few little streams that I found in rivers. But what stands out, oddly enough, was a little pond at a rest stop that I found. Somewhere near the Oregon border, I don't remember exactly where, probably couldn't find it again if I tried. And for the holiday, I was surprised to find how many people were on the road and at that rest stop, which was really more like a park. It was filled with RVs and people coming and going. I saw a few people fishing this little pond. I went to take a look, and nobody seemed to be catching anything, but from what I could tell, they weren't experienced in this type of fishing. There it is. But being who I am, okay, I was a little bit cocky when it comes to fishing. I thought, I'll show him how it's done. I grabbed my smallest fishing pole from the van, the one I use for small mountain streams to catch small wild trout. It was not a large pond, so I figured the fish weren't too big, and that they were all wise to the standard offerings of roadside fishermen with their oversized gear. So with some light line and small, appropriately sized lures, it was not long before I caught my first fish. And then my second and third. And with the fish I was catching, I also gained the attention of the other people fishing and some of the RVers that were hanging out, and started getting a little bit of an audience. People started asking me what I was catching them on, what kind of fish they were, etc., the standard questions. One of the other fishers, a teen boy, he asked me if I could help him catch a fish. After looking at his gear and deciding it was all wrong for the conditions, I let him use my pole and my lures, and after a little bit of instruction and on how to use it and where he should cast and all that, I let him go. And it wasn't long before he caught his first fish. And while he fished, I hung out with a group of people that had gathered around a park bench by the pond. One of the RVers asked me if I wanted some turkey. It was part of their Thanksgiving dinner. And I explained that no, I'm fasting today. But it struck me there, far from family and friends, that I was not alone on Thanksgiving, as I expected to be. And I couldn't help but smile as we sat around this concrete bench at a rest stop in Northern California. This makeshift family. The teen fisher, he caught 2 in total, his first fish ever. And he couldn't wait to tell his grandfather, who was napping in one of the RVs. He was the owner of the gear that he had been using. On my drive home, fish in the cooler, I decided I was going to break my fast when I got home, and I was going to do it with those fish. It was going to be a late dinner for sure, but I could not imagine a better way to end this day. Maybe it was the fast, maybe it was that beer or 2 that I drank getting the fish ready to eat, but when I took that first bite, I had a revelation of sorts. For the first time since I was a kid and was forced to say grace before every meal, for the first time since I moved away from home, I prayed over that meal. I didn't use any words. Just an acknowledgement of the life that I had taken to make that meal possible. And I was struck by a real sense of gratitude for the whole day. The hiking, the fishing, and my Thanksgiving family, temporary as it was. Now, I can't tell you how many fish I had killed and eaten up to that point. More than I can ever even begin to count. But in that first bite, as I chewed, I was overwhelmed with a feeling I had not felt before, and words from my childhood religious training hit me like a ton of bricks. This is my body, which is given for you. Wow. Wow. There are no words that I can say how powerful it was. But a seed was planted then. I didn't know it then. I didn't want to admit it, actually. That was the beginning of the end of my fishing career. From that point onward, it became harder and harder to treat fish as though they existed for my pleasure. Then it became harder and harder to treat any being that way. And I struggled with this for years and years. I've come to recognize that all life is divine. A word I know that is problematic for many people. What does it mean to say that life is divine? Well, we have established certain criteria and characteristics of life. We can describe life. But the cause of life is beyond our understanding. How did life emerge out of inorganic material? How did carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, etc. give rise to conscious beings capable of asking this question? Why did life emerge from inorganic material? Why did consciousness emerge in living beings? When inorganic compounds gave rise to living cells, the cells included the individual characteristics of those compounds while transcending the potential of those compounds. And as individual cells evolved into more complex organisms, they still included those original cells while transcending their possibilities into something new. And when one of those complex organisms achieved consciousness, it transcended and included everything that preceded it: the atoms, the molecules, the cells. And it made possible the impossible. And as consciousness evolved, it too followed the same pattern of inclusion and transcendence. To say something is divine is to say that it has transcendent qualities. To say something is divine is to say that it has a potential that cannot be explained by objective means alone. And so to say that life is divine is to say that life cannot be understood through objective observation and description alone. Divinity is our subjective experience of this transcendent quality of life. And divinity can only be experienced subjectively, utilizing our own transcendent qualities of consciousness to experience the transcendent aspects of all life. Because the truth of the matter is, we were born into this world. We were not born into it, we were born out of it. We are literally made from those same raw ingredients we find all around us. We are literally what we eat, breathe, and drink. We are the earth made conscious, and that is no small thing. And this isn't just some mystical woo-woo sort of thing. More and more, the evidence shows us that our connection to nature is not just theoretical. We are physiologically stronger and healthier the more time we spend in nature. The Japanese, they started a trend they call forest bathing, or Shinrin Yoku. And it's supported by a growing number of scientific studies. Forest bathing is said to boost immune systems, reduce blood pressure and stress levels, improve mood, increase ability to focus, increase energy level, improve sleep. Just by spending time in a forest, doing nothing but breathing. Brings to mind what John Muir wrote. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home. Wilderness is a necessity. And it's a necessity for us because we belong in the forest. And we belong at the beach. We belong in nature. And the more and more we alienate ourselves, the more and more we become dependent on a growing number of dangerous pharmaceuticals. Now, I'm confident that every person in this room accepts the theory of evolution as truth. Yet I must ask if we live as if it were true. Because we evolved to live in concert with nature, not in isolation. We are creatures with a body, a mind, and a soul. And physiologically, psychologically, and spiritually, we are healthier and more resilient and more capable of confronting life's challenges when we embrace and nurture the complex web of connections that bind us to the whole of creation. So when we are in community with nature and in communion with each other, we are healthier, stronger in every way possible. We live longer and happier lives. Now, one of the most intimate ways that we interact with the world of nature and the world and the web of life, one of the most intimate connections is through what we eat. And for all the same reasons that forest bathing is good for us, it matters what we eat and how we eat it. And because literally what we eat becomes our body, because the condition of our body affects us emotionally and spiritually, it matters not just what we eat, but where it came from, how it relates to the interdependent web of life. All this matters. This is your body. This is your flesh. It is your blood. It matters where it came from and how it was raised. So I invite you to build a relationship with your food. Celebrate it, commune with it, and pray over it. Not with idle words, but with conscious awareness of where it came from and the impact that it might have on the web of life. The eye of God looks upon us with wonder and delight. Such strange creatures we are hiding from this light. So afraid of our own shadows, we put on our masks, inventing new ways to keep busy with menial tasks. The eye sees and knows all, no matter where we hide. It is there in our deepest soul, not to punish, but to guide. The answers we seek require no force. The light within guides our course. So be it. Amen. And blessed be.